Hey guys, how's it going? Master Cal here, and today I'm going to be doing the 21st video of my 2021 NFL offseason preview series for the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts will continue to have a new face at quarterback, with Phillip Rivers being one and done as he has decided to retire. And so to replace him, the Colts have made a huge splash already as they have traded for former Eagles number 2 overall pick Carson Wentz. Colts head coach Frank Reich was the offensive coordinator for the Eagles in 2017, which was Wentz's best season, where he would have been the runaway for MVP had he not suffered that ACL tear, in which obviously we know that Nick Foles wound up leading Philadelphia to the Super Bowl that year. Since then, Wentz has dealt with injuries and underwhelming performance, especially last year, where he, I believe, was the second worst quarterback in the NFL besides Sam Darnold, and so Reich will now be tasked with fixing Wentz. So the Colts will hope that he can be their quarterback for the foreseeable future. If it doesn't work out, they have just 2 years, and then they can move on from him. So their starter before Wentz would have been added was Jacob Eason, 4th rounder in 2020 out of Washington. There was some rumblings that Eason could go as high as the back of the first round, but he slipped all the way to day 3 of the draft. He didn't play at all his rookie season as he was the third stringer behind Rivers and Jacoby Brissett, but now that both those guys are free agents, Eason now looks to be the primary backup for Wentz, unless the Colts add a proven veteran to backup, which that's probably a good idea at this point, given that Wentz has dealt with injuries, I think, pretty much every year that he's been in the league. At running back, their highest cap hit belongs to Nyheim Hines. I think he was a 4th or a 5th rounder in 2018. He's their pass-catching back primarily. Jonathan Taylor is their starting running back, 2nd rounder in 2020 out of Wisconsin. Taylor started off the season slow, but he wound up taking over the starting job as the season went on, and he looks to be the feature back next year with Hines being the 3rd down back. At left tackle is Anthony Castonzo, the Colts' first-round pick in 2011. Unfortunately for the Colts, Castonzo has decided to call it a career as well, as he had just 1 season left on his contract. Castonzo contemplated retirement last offseason before he agreed to re-sign with the Colts on a 2-year contract. But the Colts will definitely miss him being a rock on that left side of the line. At left guard is Quentin Nelson, the number 6 overall pick in 2018, who's been one of the best guards in the NFL since he stepped onto the field. The Colts will definitely pick up his 5th-year option, and I imagine discuss an extension with him. And I got to wonder, he's definitely going to wait until after free agents Joe Tooney and Brandon Scherff sign their next contracts, because that will likely set the market for what Nelson will make. At center is Ryan Kelly, 1st rounder in 2016, I think out of Alabama. Kelly signed an extension last offseason through the next 4 seasons, as he's been pretty productive for them outside of missing some time due to injury a couple years ago. At right guard is Mark Glowinski, a former waiver claim who has done pretty well for himself in Indianapolis. He's in the final year of his contract. At right tackle is Braden Smith, 2nd rounder in 2018, who's also been outstanding, and he's also due up for an extension. Wide receiver, Michael Pittman Jr., 2nd rounder in 2020 out of USC, who had a pretty productive rookie season. He wasn't outstanding, but he wasn't outstanding in a very deep wide receiver draft class, but he was still pretty solid, and we'll see how he does in year 2. He also had a pretty good wild card game against the Bills. Their 2nd highest cap hit, and then Desmond Patman is their next highest outside wide receiver cap hit. I think he was like a 7th round draft pick in 2020. He played like a tiny fraction of snaps as a rookie, mostly was a healthy scratch. And then their slot receiver is Paris Campbell, 2nd rounder in 2019 from Ohio State. Campbell, unfortunately, has played in just 9 total games over his 2 seasons because of a myriad of injuries, so we'll see if year 3 is the one he'll be able to stay healthy. And then tight end is going to be Jack Doyle, who's been with the Colts for a while now. He's a pretty solid player at his position. On the defensive side, you got Kimoko Toure. Toure was also a 2nd rounder in 2018. Toure is a guy that the Colts have a lot of hype for, but he hasn't lived up to it, mostly because of injuries. Defensive tackle DeForest Buckner, former number 7 overall pick by the Niners. He was the Colts' marquee addition last offseason when they traded their 1st-round pick to the Niners to acquire him and later signed him to an extension. And Buckner was outstanding once again for them. Next is Grover Stewart, a 4th rounder in 2017 who got himself a midseason extension and he does pretty well against the run. And then off the other edge is Ben Banogu, who was a second rounder in 2019 from TCU. Banogu did not play much this past season. He fell out of favor in the rotation and was a healthy scratch at times, so we'll see if he can rebuild his stock in year 3. At linebacker is Darius Leonard, second rounder from that productive 2018 draft class that the Colts have had, and he's been one of the better linebackers in the league, tackling machine. He's a bit of a liability in coverage, but overall he's very good, and he and Fred Warner will be two guys at that position that'll be getting pretty big contracts pretty soon. Then you got Bobby Okereke, who was a third rounder in 2018. And he's been pretty decent for them as their number 3 linebacker, and he might be in for a bigger role next year. And then their number 3 linebacker is Matthew Adams, who I think was a 7th rounder in 2018. He's been pretty much exclusively a special teamer throughout his career. At cornerback, you got Rock Ya-Sin, a 2nd rounder in 2019 out of Temple. Ya-Sin has not quite lived up to the hype so far. He's dealt with some injuries. I think he was on the COVID list last year and hasn't lived up to his potential yet. Their number 2 is going to be Marvell Tell III, who was a 5th rounder in 2019 out of USC. Tell saw some action as a rookie in 2019. He did not play last year because he opted out. And then in the slot is Kenny Moore. He's been with the Colts for several years now. He's one of the better nickel defenders in the NFL. Safety is Julian Blackmon, 3rd rounder in 2020 out of Utah. His rookie year started off excellent, but his play actually declined a bit down the stretch, so he'll look to rebuild from that in year 2. And then you got Khari Willis, 6th rounder in 2019 out of Michigan. He took over the starting safety job as a rookie, and he was the starter again last year and has been pretty decent. On special teams, Luke Rhodes is the long snapper, Rigoberto Sanchez is the punter, and Rodrigo Blankenship as the kicker. Blankenship had a pretty solid rookie year last year. Their free agents are going to be quarterback Jacoby Brissett, quarterback Phillip Rivers. We mentioned that he's retiring, and he'll be coaching high school football. Wide receiver T.Y. Hilton, defensive end Justin Houston, defensive end Danico Autry, safety Malik Hooker, who's coming off of yet another major injury, cornerback Xavier Rhodes, who had a pretty productive bounce-back year for the Colts after his play was declining a bit in Minnesota. Offensive tackle LaRaven Clark, who's also rehabbing an injury. Safety Tavon Wilson, cornerback TJ Carey, tight end Trey Burton, offensive tackle Chaz Green, center Joey Hunt, cornerback Tremont Smith is a restricted free agent. Defensive tackle Taylor Stallworth is an exclusive rights free agent. They've re-signed him. Number 2 linebacker Anthony Walker Jr., tight end Mo Alley Cox is a restricted free agent. Wide receiver Zach Pascal is a restricted free agent. Defensive end Al-Qawadin Muhammad. Running back Marlon Mack, who was the starter to open the year last year, but unfortunately suffered an Achilles tear. And with Taylor obviously in the mix, Mack is probably not going to be back. Safety George Odom is a restricted free agent. And wide receiver Ashton Dulin is an exclusive rights free agent who the Colts have re-signed to a 1-year deal. Indianapolis has $44.68 million in cap space following the trade for Wentz, so that gives them a lot of flexibility for other positions. Their positions of need, well, they've already checked off the quarterback position now that Wentz is in the building, and again, I do expect them to maybe add a veteran backup because of Wentz's injury history. They're going to need a new left tackle to replace Castonzo. I have seen some reports that the Colts might try and move Nelson from guard to left tackle, but I've also seen some people saying they probably would not dare to do that. And so, yeah, there's options out there, so they can try to go after Trent Williams in free agency, or they can maybe swing a trade for the Raiders' Trent Brown or the Ravens' Orlando Brown to fill in their left tackle spot. Otherwise, they can turn to the draft. They're going to need to get a wide receiver in there. Hilton is going to test the market, so we'll see if he winds up re-signing. Even if Hilton does re-sign, it probably wouldn't hurt to add another receiver as well. Defensive end with, you got 3 notable players that are free agents there, Houston, Autry, and Muhammad. And so adding, if only depth there would be important. Finding a number 2 corner, I think, or number 1, depending on how you feel about Ya-Sin. And then yeah. I could also see them maybe getting an upgrade over Jack Doyle. I could also see them maybe just sticking with Doyle and Ali Cox next year, and then maybe making a big move in the following offseason, but yeah. And then I think that will basically about do it for their needs. So, as far as their potential cap casualties go, I mean, they don't really have any of them just because they have a lot of guys that are on rookie deals or guys that they've just recently signed to extensions, like Kelly and whatnot, Buckner, um, and obviously some guys that are up for second contracts pretty soon. Nelson, Smith, Leonard, those guys are all up for second deals. So, like, in all honesty, like, the only cap casualty I can really think of might be Doyle, and that's only if they wanted to find an upgrade. So, yeah. That's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll stay tuned for the next offseason preview video.